来的配乐。Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Will you
send
that to me?
I'll send that to you. I think you just got a little bit of music on the side. Welcome everyone. My name is Edward Smaldone. That's me. And my colleague Douglas Neans. You'll be hearing from him in a moment. So Professor Neans and I are both composers. We're both professors. He in Cincinnati, me here in Flushing. You want to just tell them that much, or do they?
Yeah. 他们俩主要就是说一下，说他们俩都是作曲家，然后也都是教授。Douglas Neans 他主要是在 Cincinnati， 然后他呢是在 Flushing Queens。对。
And we had a wonderful invitation from Jean to participate in this project, and we're very excited that we've managed to complete our pieces in time.
他说他们很高兴，然后我这次邀请他们来参与我们这次这个音乐会的计划，然后他们也非常庆幸他们在这么短的时间里面按时完成了这次的任务。
We had one meeting back in August, I think it was. We sat in a little place.
June, right?
June?
Yeah, I think June. June, yeah. I think
okay,
that.
I forgot. But we had one meeting and talked about this whole project, and I think, all had a very clear idea in our heads what the final project would be, and I think we're doing a very good. You've done a fabulous job.
Oh, thank you. 他们就说我们第一次，我们其实在这一次这个会之前，我们见了一次面，大家在一起开了一次会，在6月份的时候，在 Flushing 的一个很小的地方。然后在那一次，就是我们就大概知道了说，我们这次音乐会最终会走上了一个什么样的一个这个方向，然后，所以我们最后真的完成了这个任务。
So there was a lot of work in between. So the first thing I think I'll now talk a little bit about my piece.
Sure.
Okay. So my piece is called Water Margin, which is a famous Chinese novel. Yeah. You know the?
Okay. Oh, yeah, they know that.
They know that. So tell them.
Yeah, 他说他这个曲子呢，这是他写的一首曲子，然后他的这个曲子主要就是来自于刚刚大家说的那部中国最著名的那个小说《水浒传》。对。哦。
I have some very good friends Chinese friends who are from Beijing, and they gave me a gift of some characters from this story.
他有一个朋友，他是最好的一个中国朋友，从北京给他带了一套《水浒传》的那个人画像作为礼物送给他。
So I read about this story, and there were some very interesting ideas in the story that I've tried to incorporate in my piece.
他在那个书里面，他把每一个人物介绍都读了一遍过，他觉得非常有趣，所以他在这个曲子里面，他希望能够就是说运用一些那个人物的这个性格在他的这个曲子里面这样。
So one of the central issues of the story, which I know I don't need to tell anyone. Right?
他说他在这里面有一个他觉得是一个这个小说里面一个问题，但他觉得他就不要再告诉大家了，就班门弄斧了这样。
Is the idea of a group of sort of revolutionaries, a group that is outside of the government.
他就说这是一个组织，就是说是非政府组织，然后想做一个革命。
That sort of create a kind of revolution against. They fight against the government and win.
所以他说这个是一个故事，就是说是关于这个非政府组织对抗政府，然后最后赢了的这样的一个故事。
Which is a kind of universal story of the sort of the regular people rising up.
他说这是感觉就是一个全球都会做的一样的一个故事，就是说普通的人，然后变成小人物变成大人物，然后对抗这个全世界这样。
As an American, that's a story that resonates for Americans as well.
他说所以对于美国人来说，这个故事也很能接受的。
Another feature of the story is the use of vernacular Chinese in the story. It was a very revolutionary thing at the time. not using formal court language, but using vernacular, common language.
Yeah, 所以他说这个里面也用了很多那种就是说中国的这种像文言，对方言，然后呢，这个是在中国现代的文化里面不太常用的。
So in my piece, I have tried to incorporate sort of not exactly popular music, but a more sort of visceral, a more vernacular ideas in the music. It's not just a very abstract piece.
对，他说他这个曲子不是一个特别抽象的曲子，然后根据那个故事过后，他就想把这个曲子里面变得更就是可听啊，或者这样的一个感觉。对。
And the instrument that I'm writing for, the Chinese instrument, is the zhongluan, which is a 4-string instrument played with a pick, very much like a guitar, like a Western guitar.
他说他这次用的这个中国乐器中阮的话，是一个4根弦的一个中国乐器，然后这个乐器用那个 plug 就是那叫什么拨子来拨，对，然后那个东西很像西方的吉他。
Right. And I started my musical life as a guitar player.
哦，他自己就是一个吉他手，对。
Yeah. So I took one of my guitars and made it into a zhongluan because I couldn't find a real one.
因为他把他自己的吉他变成了一个中阮，在家写的时候。
So I was sitting in my basement and in my studio and playing and improvising and by the way, improvisation is a very vernacular form of musical expression.
Yeah. 他说他自己就坐在他家地下室，他工作室里面，然后自己在那吉他那就是各种即兴，然后他说其实即兴也是音乐里面很常用的一个方式。
So my improvisations eventually were, very carefully prepared, and then became part of the piece.
对，所以他说他的那个即兴的话，也是他其实也是准备好的，然后很仔细的准备好所有的 detail 就是细节，然后来即兴的。所以然后这种即兴的部分就是很大的，在这个曲子里面就是一个很大的一个部分。
And now I could play maybe just 1 minute.
他会现在就放这个其中这1分钟这个曲子。
So what I think I can do here. So there's the piece. So it starts with, it's got these strums and things in the ruan part, and does all. I'm gonna. This is the part that I think. I think this is the spot. So then if I go to this player, and then I play audio. So it starts with that. And so on, but But then now that he starts to strum like he's in a band. Now that's just a little taste of it. But you see, it's got this very kind of rhythmic drive and energy, almost like a vernacular kind of energy to it. And that's the big opening section. And then there's a very abstract section, which is more usual for a contemporary composer.
他说这个曲子刚刚大家听到这段就是这种节奏型的这种很有动力的这样一个，然后作为一个开场，然后接下来的话会有是比较像接下来一段会比较抽象的音乐，然后但其实这种写法对于一个现代就是作曲家来说，其实是不是常用的一种写法，对。
Right, and then the happy stuff comes back.
所以呢，接下来就是开心的东西又回来了，这样。
So I mean, this was it was a lot of fun to write this piece and. We're looking forward to the concert.
因为他说他其实写这个曲子，他也觉得有很多乐趣，这样，然后他很期待大家能够就是这个 concert coming 的。
Okay. Thank you. Do you want me to get yours up?
Oh, please. Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out on this frigid day to come and hear us talk about our pieces.
说他很高兴大家能够在这样的一个天气来看我们，然后听他介绍他自己的一个曲子这样。
My music generally of late has been about two things: the natural world and using the natural world as a kind of a metaphor for our internal emotional lives.
他的音乐里面主要就包括两样东西，一个就是说是这种自然，然后第二种就是用自然的方式，然后能够进行冥想，然后去感受这个叫什么内心的一种感情这样。
For example, I have a new CD about to come out, which has two works on it. The first is called Tempest, and it is a flute concerto, which refers to various wind cycles around the world for each movement. And then a work called Unfinished Earth, which also is about the formation of the earth and its seas, and uses those as metaphors to our internal lives.
他现在他就说，比如说像他接下来会推出的一盘 CD 里面有两首曲子，一首是一个那个长笛协奏曲，然后在那首长笛协奏曲里面，他是用一种就是像模仿那种风的声音。然后所以是一个那种不停循环那样风的声音，然后另外一首曲子是一个那个叫什么交响曲，然后是一个叫做没有完成的地球，然后去就是说也是就是说用它的这种自然的力量去感受内心的一种情感。
So this work I called Falling Air because it refers to several things to do, with air. First of all, air pressure, and when certain air pressure systems meet, it produces a system of what they call falling air, or falling air pressure. So that was one thing that I thought to use as a metaphor for this work, and it carries with it also the amazing sonority of the Shun. That also has a constant airflow in and out of the instrument, and so this notion of air falling through the instrument was one that also was a good metaphor for me for this work.
因为他说他这首曲子叫做 Falling Air， 主要第一个就是说 air 就是说这个空气有很多不同的气压，然后这种不同气压就产生了这种就是这种空气的流动。然后第二个原因就是因为他在他用的这部中国乐器笙里面也是用这个笙在演奏笙的时候也是气流的进和出，然后这也是他用这个取这个名字的一个原因。
And then finally, the expressive notion of air falling or gas, actually the physical motion of that falling, encouraged me to think of these long, expressive falling lines, like this very first one that opens the work in the Shin.
因为他说，因为这种就是说这种气流的这种往下走的这种趋势，然后就是像他在乐曲里面就会在这个地方展示出来，他的那个音高是往下的这样一个走，对。
The composition plan for this work was a little bit different because of the Shin. Normally, I would have much more complicated harmonies in my works, sometimes very chromatic passages in my works. But the shen has a fixed kind of a scale, and so it constrained how I conceived of the work from a tonal point of view.
他说这首曲子的音乐语言跟他平时的音乐语言不太一样，是因为他在他本身的音乐语言里面，他会用大量的和声，包括一些半音和声。然后，但是因为这个声的这种限制性，然后就是说，所以声有一个很限制的，就是很窄的一个音域，所以他就是说是把很多的那种和声就变了。所以这是他在作曲的刚开始的时候，就为了这把声，然后在音乐上面做了一些调整。
But in place of that harmonic expansiveness that I would have in a typical like orchestra work or so, I had this timbral aspect of the shen and also the percussion that led to a more timbral excitement in the work and more rhythmic excitement in the work also. So timbre and rhythm tends to drive this work more than anything.
也因为这个说，就是说他这个因为跟他平时写交响乐不太一样的这种和声的话，所以他在这部曲子里面，他主要是用两点，包括就是声的这种特殊的音色，以及这种打击乐的这种音色。所以在这首曲子里面，音色以及节奏是他整个这个曲子的核心东西。
The work is pretty simple in the way I've formed it. There's this introduction section, and then there's a slow, very expressive section in 3 long blocks, and then a fast section, and then a section that returns a bit like this, and then a concluding final fast section.
整个曲子的结构很简单，这样的一个很简单的一个开场白，接下来就是一个快速的一个片段。这个快速片段里面主要有3个大的一个快，3个大的 section， 那就叫什么快，然后再接下来是一个大的 part， 对 part that's the block right， 然后再接下来是一个大的一个快的片段过后，然后回到这样的一个简单的这个开场。
The challenges of writing this piece beyond the technical ones were how do you make something that sounds on a Chinese instrument natural, not just like superimposing Western music right on top? I didn't want to do that.
所以他说，其实在这个曲子里面，除了一些技术上的一个挑战以外，那对他的另外一个挑战就是说，如何让这个中国乐器很自然的发生这种声音，而不是很强加的把一种西方的这种音乐强加在这个中国乐器身上。
So I found myself on YouTube a lot listening to this instrument and listening to really good players of this instrument. And I think it rubbed off a little bit in some of my solutions composition.
所以他最后的解决方法就是他自己在家里面听那个视频啊，听很多人不停的演奏，然后就是听他们那种声音，然后去听好的演奏员如何研究这个声音，然后他觉得他在这个曲子里面他就解决了一些他本身一开始想到的一些问题。
And we just had a session with the soloist, the shen player, and he told me that one passage, remember he said one passage was like a Chinese melody, which I was not conscious, but maybe something rubbed too deeply into my consciousness.
他说我们刚刚结束了跟这个 solo 声的一个就是见面，然后刚刚那个声演奏员提到说，它中间有一个乐句特别像中国音乐某个曲子里面的一个东西，但他其实自己不知道，他说也许就是他听太多了，然后就自然而然的被激发出来。
I'll show you that passage maybe in a little moment. So for me, I looked for the common areas between all these instruments. What sort of things they shared, and tried to make the work as a group, not just one isolated instrument and an ensemble, but try to blend them fairly well. Harmony worked well for me in that way. Timbre was also a unifying thing that allowed me to make these instruments work together well. And then also gesture, musical gesture.
他说他为了让这个曲子听起来不是特别像是一个中国乐器和个大的西洋乐的这种分开的这样的一个组合，他为了能够让这两个中西方的东西能够混在一起，他主要就是说着重在音色上面。第一个用音色，然后还有就是说他用这个和声，然后以及包括音乐的一种结构，不是结构，叫做什么？Music gesture. What's that music gesture? What's that Chinese? 就是说
A flow or something.
就是说
I don't have gestures.
Chinese. How to say the gesture?
Okay.
所以就是音乐形态，音乐形态这种几个音乐这种形态合在一起，然后让这种东西方的音乐很自然的融合在一起，而不是分开的一种感觉。
What would this piece be called in Chinese?
这个中文叫什么？
It's also not possible to.
留下来。
如果你把它翻成落风的话，也蛮有诗意。落风。表面上看上去很是对应的翻译，但是“落风”两个字本身在中文里面是蛮有味道的。Falling air， 落风。落风是个 jet stream， 落风是这样。
I'll play maybe a little bit of it for you.
Yeah, it's got a long lead in for sounds.
Now go back.
Exported it, it didn't record it.
You might not have had it selected somehow.
No, I don't know. It didn't load it. Okay, so I want to get rid of that because that won't give a good impression. So, Jen.
Yeah. You have a problem.
So you need to
use your imagination.
Tell people that it did not export properly the file, and so the Shun line did not record. From this MIDI file, so
doesn't matter. They can also
I'll just go through.
But they don't hear the shame.
Understand, even I couldn't read a lot of music notes, but I was like go to the Carnegie Hall and the music a lot concert. I was just wondering, these years a lot of the artists and the musicians compose, they pick something from East culture and from West culture. They try to mix it together and make some new things. I was just wondering, if you put your composer on the stage, you use some Chinese traditional instruments or totally still orchestra instruments?
Well, for these projects, for the two of us, this was the first time either one of us ever wrote for these Chinese instruments.
Okay.
Now, there are quite a few Chinese composers who are working in the United States. People like Bright Sheng and Chen Yi and Zhou Long. There are quite a few very prominent Chinese composers that have come to the United States and write music for the Western orchestra. They were trained in Western music and they write music for the Western orchestra. Very often those composers use Chinese themes and Chinese ideas.
他说，就是说，这是他们俩第一次为这样的一种就是东西方乐器合在一起的一个形式来写。然后，但是呢，也有很多就是说，比如说像很有名的作曲家，中国作曲家来到美国的，包括陈怡、周龙以及韩顿，他们会在他们的西方音乐，比如说西方的交响乐里面加入中国的主题元素在里面。
Right. Bright Sheng, for example, refers to himself as 100% a Chinese composer and 100% an American composer.
Yeah.
It's impossible. But he identifies very strongly with both traditions. And then he's who he is.
Yeah, 所以他说，像 Brian 盛宗亮，他就是认为他自己是100%的中国人，也是100%的西方人。然后他说这个不可能，但是他就这个作曲家就这么认为他自己的。
Now I can't speak for Professor Nians, but for myself, this is a new idea. Adding I was invited to be part of this project, and it was an exciting idea, and I'm very happy with the piece that I wrote.
对，他说这是他自己的，他对他自己来言的话，这是一个非常让他兴奋的一个东西，就是说也他自己第一次有一种新的尝试，然后被邀请到这一个项目中来写这个新的作品。
I don't know if I will write another. Maybe I will write another piece for Jean Rouen. I don't know. So it's a kind of a special example for us because it's not what we usually do. But I think that for me, it was very important that I was being respectful of the tradition and of the music and of the instruments, and I just tried to write a beautiful piece. That was my goal.
Okay.
Do you mind if I add a little bit to that
Sure.
too? I'm Ford Firkman, by the way, artistic director of one of the partner ensembles, unheard-of ensemble. So, if you have any instrumental questions, any questions about the ensembles, I'm the person to ask. Basically, for us, it's a very rare thing to bridge outside of playing with Western classical instruments. Just to speak about how rare of an opportunity this is for us. This is the second time in my life I've played with a non-Western instrument. The first time I played with a pipa last spring, but it was it's always on such a small one-to-one scale, bringing so many people together, so many different groups, and really going for it and putting all of this out there. That's something that's incredibly rare.
这是我们这次音乐会邀请的一个乐团的，他是这个音乐团的总监，他也是一个单簧管演奏家。然后他说，在他的这个音乐生涯里面，非常非常少见有这样的一种，就是说东西方音乐的这种，就是说把西方音乐以外的这种乐器带入这个音乐的这种合作机会。然后他自己的话，这是第二次合作，上一次合作也是去年的春天的时候了。然后但是呢，那种合作也都是很小型的合作，1对1的这种合作，不像这次我们这么一个大型的，有这么多的演奏员参与的这样的一个大型的合作这样。
The end result is a party. There's going to be so many people on stage.
其实就是更多是一种 party 感觉，有这么多的人在台上面。对。
Yeah, it's a wonderful
opportunity.
Okay.
The Chinese traditional music, you put them together.
Well, we didn't take. Neither one of us actually use traditional Chinese literature, actual music, Chinese music. What we did was we took the tone color and the character of those instruments and made them our own. I wrote a piece that I hope sounds like me, and Professor Nians wrote a piece that I presume sounds like him. And it's just that we've got this. It's like we're like cooks, and we were given this new interesting ingredient that we didn't know before, and the idea is to make something tasty out of it.
Yeah, this is also the main idea for this concert, the new fusion. It's not really we use the Chinese instrument or Chinese music or Chinese culture, but we just want them to consider Chinese instrument the same as the Western instrument. Yeah.
Can I call that kind of music? I know the food, they have some fusion. Can we call that kind of music like a fusion music?
Yes, I think you can.
The title is fusion.
That's the name of the program.
Okay.
Fusion.
So this is also you gave the composer your piece of the the themes, that kind of music, fusion music.
Yes.
Okay.
But what I usually do is not fusion. What I usually do is just writing for Western instruments. Now, any composer is composing a fusion of all of the musical influences that they have experienced. That's what we do.
Yeah, 所以就是说，每一个作曲家都会这样，就是从各个不同的文化中吸取东西，然后把它合到一起来。这就是我们现在在做的事情。
I have a background in jazz and popular music, and that becomes part of what I do. I don't write pop songs for orchestra.
对，他说他自己的音乐里面也从 pop music 流行音乐，包括爵士乐里面收吸取的，但是他也不是说他会把一个交响乐写得像流行音乐一样。
But that experience has something to do with the kind of music I write.
但是这种就是我们音乐里面的一种方向，就是说会吸取各种不同的文化去进入自己的音乐里面去。
I think that's true of any composer. What else do we bring? We bring to our work our own. You bring yourself, and then you express yourself. myself is all of those things. Now, with new friends who are Chinese, and I have old friends who are Chinese, and I have these new instruments that I've been introduced to, so now I have a new experience. It will be interesting to see how this influences the next piece I write.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the beauty of it. It's
Yeah.
a dialogue. And,
Exactly right.
By bringing so many people from so many different parts of both the U.S. and abroad together, it's going to basically inform all of us going forward. It's a complete mixture.
You want to hear this piece?
I'll play just a little of the opening.
Thank you.
I've got this. That's the first one of these three long expressive parts.
这是其中三个这种大的这种里面的三个长的这种句子里面的其中一句。
And then it goes towards the end. I'll see if I can find some of the faster music so you can hear.
他现在给大家放一些这个曲子里面的一些快速的片段。
Okay, from
rock and roll.
194.
It's page 18. If you've got it in score view.
This is good. Really, it's just like your title.
This is from this presto part. Eventually, yeah.
Did you start to play on that?
Yeah. statement of the opening, and then that fast music comes back again.
Cool.
Yes.
Bravo.
Thank you. Any questions for me, please? Or?
大家有什么问题要问他？
那个数 SH 是一个 initial 的声，
Yeah, it's a
the
short.
initial. Oh, okay.
All of the instruments have a shortened
initial.
for the score. That's all. Any other
So
questions?
it's going to sound completely different.
Yeah,
The rhythms
definitely,
of
yeah.
this. It sounds so different.
Yeah, these
大
are
家到时候听到现场是跟这个完全不一样的，声音不一样的。这是只是 MIDI 版的。
Better.
yeah.
Better. Different and better.
对，那种会比较好一些，那种跟小样而已。对对。
You're performing the Carnegie or no? Will you perform this piece?
No, I will
Next
not
Monday.
I will not be performing, but the piece will be performed.
Yes.
Yeah.
December 18th,
这个曲子会演，但
Wild
它
Recital
不会上
Hall
演。
next to Carnegie Hall, the small.
这里有票，如果你要的话，他们
哦
下个礼拜一的。
对，他们不会上台演，但这首曲子会
Yeah, I
演。
know, the composer, yeah.
对，但是他会上台演，他是 performer 演奏。
You know, actually, one really nice thing about where we're performing this, it's such a historic hall, so ingrained as a part of like New York City's cultural life,
Yes.
and being able to like play in such an intimate space where we're actually going to be like right here, like face to face with the audience. That's going to make this. I mean, I'm just looking at the scores, and I want to hear these in person, you know. Especially like this Shang has such a cool timbre. I want to hear how that blends in. Wow.
然后这就是纽约的一种魅力，我们可以这样跟就音乐人可以跟这个叫什么观众面对面，然后他自己也很期待听到这个曲子，这种因为他说这个声对他来说也是很新鲜的一种声音嘛。
I'm myself not a music man, or I don't understand the music shit at all, but I have ears. But I think the try itself is very interesting. And especially you talk about water margins, that's kind of getting inspiration from the classic novel Chinese story. I think you realize that is the Chinese version of a Robin Hood story.
Yes.
Exactly, it was, and about the grassroots uprising against the government. And it's a well-known family story in China. And myself, at least read it like 20 times.
Oh, wow.
It's where I came from. And then I started from reading that's water margin the age of 10.
Wow.
And that led me go step by step forward, get into the classic Chinese literature as my major and my career.
Oh wow! Oh my God.
So familiar with the water margin, every character, and at our childhood time, their nickname we just so familiar with.
Right.
We compete each other. You call name, what's the nickname of the one of the heroes?
Right.
So we compete each other even. Right. So it's really deep into our mind, influence our thinking. So when you read that story and make that music and created by a West-educated professor, musician, I think itself it's very inspirational for me. You know,
all what you have said makes me feel like I've got a lot of nerve to do this. It's better I didn't know this before.
Yeah. But now I try to feel that what I read before from my ear.
Well, do you hear anything?
Yes. Oh. You feel the rhyme, you feel the tense.
Okay.
You feel the upset.
The energy.
And of course, everyone's experience is different.
Right.
And the composer and the performer and the audience, actually the whole group, they join together as one of the creations. So for me, it's really a good story, a good story itself.
Thank you.
对，大家有没有什么问题要问问这个 performer？ 他们跟这个中国乐器的什么？
You're a performer, but they did that piece because they read a lot of they listen a lot of the Eastern traditional music. Like him, they probably read the water margin in English, but they do a lot of research. But for your performer, I'm not sure you have that time to do that, but if you perform, how did you put your kind of that feeling in your, your instruments, the music?
Well, that's a great question. As performers, we spend a lot of time studying these scores and finding out where, especially when a composer's living and right there, we find out where they're coming from. We get to talk and work with each composer. One thing that's really great about this experience is you're going to be working with all of the above in person, right? And so they get to share these expressions from their vantage point, these backgrounds of each work that you get to experience as someone who's looking into the mind of the composer, and also you get to bring your own background and your own experience to this. And that mixed in with the friendships and the dialogues of each performance that you bring to the table, that's what makes the kind of knowledge and the kind of reference there. It's that studying and that dialogue. One thing that's really interesting, one of our composers, Reiko Feuding, who unfortunately couldn't be here today, his piece is called Procession Dona Nobis Pacem, which was written to capture the idea of musicians as a vehicle for peace in this. It's based off of Madrigal by Josquin de Prez, and one thing that we get to bring in and internalize as performers is the idea that this expression was meant to elevate and bring people together. So when we're playing this, we're thinking about that. How do we bring people together and how do we unite us? That's one thing that I think is fascinating. How do you translate that into playing a wind instrument, clarinet in my case? You have to use your imagination and really craft something, and that's where the expression, I feel, comes from. How do you translate something that's really hard to even express yourself into words? How do you translate that into sound? And that's, I think, the beauty of it.
Thank you.
I think that music and one form of art has shared some commonality with the culture.
Yes.
Because myself write poem, and I have experience, feel the rhymes, experience, listen to your inner voice. Mm-hmm. Then you try to express it. Because I have a classic background, literature background, I know the traditional verse of the Chinese poem. So when I write the modern type one, I can feel how they make the dialogue, same as what you just expressed, When a performer may not read the word margin, for example, himself, but through the media of the composer's work, share with the composer their experience. Then they fusion together, mingle together, and everyone express their own experience finally. The same as we're writing. We're writing the word by word. It's a one word, one character. Chinese is character, but behind that, it's really your expression. That's right. It's very interesting.
Just the copy, you put
Yeah.
your own expression.
Right.
So that's why the same the music everyone perform have a different.
Right. So as a conductor, this is the why conductor his understanding of the music piece and bring everyone together. When everyone has their own style, but you needed to put them as one expression.
That's right. If this was a play or a movie, the performers are the characters, are the actors.
Right.
So, and we're the playwrights and the directors, and we're telling them how to bring their character to life.
Right.
And they need to have the skill to listen to what we're saying as well as to listen to what's on the page and to bring it to life. That's what we're trying to do.
I'm glad that you choose the water margin. That is one of my favorite.
So
oh, good. See?
It's very famous.
Professor, so in Chinese classical literature, there are 4 famous.
Yes, I know. This is the first one.
So this is the first one.
I know.
Yeah.
You talk about.
I've got
what's
3 more
next?
pieces.
You
I've got
have
3 more
pieces to go. Red Chamber.
Orchestra.
Oh,
Red Chamber.
Red
Bright
Chamber.
Chamber. Bright
When
Chamber
you-
wrote a whole opera on
Right,
the Red Chamber.
right.
So I saw.
If you in the future maybe you make the Red Chamber orchestra, that would be a
Sorry.
I gotta do
Red
it.
Chamber.
Bright Chang already
Red
did it.
Chamber.
No,
The
Red
Red Chamber.
Chinese, it's your
That's a totally different. Yeah.
I'm 100% American and 100% American.
Yes.
That is very famous. They have the movie, they have the TV episode, even have the electricity games. I
Yeah,
think for
it's
very
everywhere.
young kids, if you ask Xi Jinping, maybe he didn't know, but you ask some
Right.
characters, the figures on the
That's right.
their books, he will know they
That's
play the
good.
games.
Okay.
Good.
You have another question?
Yes, sorry if I missed it earlier. So did you pick the theme first before you pick the instrument, or you?
No,
like-
we were kind of assigned the instruments because John was organizing everything, and she said, we have this, we have that, we have these instruments, and so which one? And I think we arm wrestled to decide who. No. We were told that we had a Jean Rouen, and which is the 4-string kind of banjo, and the sheng. And since I already played the guitar, it kind of made sense for me to. It was less work from. You had all that.
And my instrument is flute, so
Oh, okay.
to write for a wind instrument felt normal.
Right.
Oh, okay.
So we bring. So that helped to sort of dovetail the experience.
I think, Professor, your interpretation of the wind from nature wind to compare with the instrument itself is very interesting too. You try to fusion together, not block by block, just step on it.
Right. Well, I think one
Deeper
thing.
understanding.
Well, I think you should come to the concert because this is going to be a very exciting piece because I can see that the computer does not do a very convincing job, but I can see with the choices that he has made that there's going to be this sort of these waves of sound that are just going to be wonderful.
Yeah, I've heard a first rehearsal with the ensemble. All of the Above ensemble is from Cincinnati, so I've had the chance to rehearse with them this piece without the Shen. And it's sounding fantastic.
Yeah.
They're amazing players. So, and I worked today with a Shen player here who's in New York, and he's also amazing. So it's going to be a fantastic concert.
Yeah, really.
Hope you all come.
May I ask you one question? Away from this music, but somehow related to what we talk about, the fusion of different kind of music, Western and East. You came to Flushing, you saw our street, like a small town in China. Our town has a rich history, actually. So it's all new, rocky. And what do you think? What's your first inspiration?
Oh, he's been here before.
Number one, I studied at Queens. I studied at Queens College. I'm a graduate, a proud graduate of Queens College, where I got my master's degree in music composition there.
How many years?
What's
how many
the
years?
last time until today to visit Flushing?
I was in Flushing just a few months ago.
Yeah, we had.
Where's the meeting?
Okay.
Yes.
My question is valid.
No, but it, you know, I can tell you as someone that grew up here and and I've been coming to Flushing. I've been here since the 70s in this area, and I lived in Jackson Heights for a while, and I've seen the transformation. I remember when I go. There's a Chinese restaurant. I remember when this was a clothing store, and I remember when this was because there's many changes, and it's there's a vibrancy and an energy in this whole area that is not like anywhere else.
Yes.
It really is. It's crazy. It's very intense. It's a very strong taste. You know, it's wonderful energy.
Last time I talked to Jen, I expect you someday you have a
Yeah, he wanted me to
write about
Flushing.
I'm Russian about in the scene.
All I need is a date for the performance. Just tell me the date it's going to be performed, and I'll be ready.
He's the first person to buy our tickets.
Oh, thank you. Oh,
Great. That's great. Well, you're in for a good night.
Yeah,
we'll see you again.
I think it's going to be good.
Yeah, it's going to be a really interesting collaboration. All these performers who don't, these different ensembles often don't get to hear one another.
Yeah.
So this is an opportunity for them as well
Know each other,
to know each other. So
Actually, it's great because, I never really met anyone from All the Above, but I knew some of the musicians. And Nave Graham, the flutist from All the Above, is going to be collaborating with me and my violinist from Unheard of, along with a couple of other really interesting collaborations. We're going to be meeting for the first time and putting this music together, and that's, crazy. It's crazy to have so many people flying in from different parts. F-plus is from Chicago, All of the Above from Cincinnati. Unheard of's the New York contingent of the performers, but it's fascinating. It's going to be a really hectic week leading up into it, but it's going to be amazing.
yeah. Anything else?
So if not the science, what other Chinese instruments that mostly impressed you the most with the unique sound or the way, or maybe in the future you're interested in trying to?
I mean, I know the erhu and ruan and sheng. The pipa, the 3-string, the song, the
3-string, yes,
the 3 sanjian. So I've listened and I've heard all these instruments. I also went to a rehearsal where there was like a Chinese orchestra, all Chinese instruments, and I mean that's always a very interesting tradition. I don't know that I don't think I'm ready to write for just Chinese instruments, but I think this, sort of bringing one instrument into an ensemble that I'm familiar with has been a very interesting experience.
I would agree with that. It's quite challenging. It's it really is like stepping into another country, another culture, and you have to really start to understand where that music and the instrument fit within the culture as well, because there are different. Like with, say, orchestral musicians, Western orchestral musicians, they pride themselves on just being able to read anything, just read it.
Right.
Not necessarily dig down deep into it and devote their lives to learning the piece, but just to be able to execute it quickly. This is not the tradition.
No.
In many parts of the world, not just China.
Right.
So it's a different thing that those musicians bring, to the preparation process of the performance. So I'm really looking forward to that too.
My students always have to suffer. I make many connections to food, and so it's like we're chefs, we're cooks, and maybe I'm an Italian cook, and I make Italian food, and I'm an expert with Italian food, which would be like, we're experts at Western music. We, with violins and cellos, we know this tradition. We can make you a delicious meal. Then somebody says, well, we want you to use sesame oil. We use olive oil. We don't use sesame oil. It's a very different taste. So you don't just pour it on. You have to do something that adds that incorporates that new taste and for us, a new sound. So there's this new sound that we want to find a way to blend and make something that's delicious, that's not what we would have made without sesame oil. So that's it. But just don't ask me to make, sesame oil and starfruit and this to make a whole meal out of all of these ingredients that I don't know is a much bigger challenge. This is a very interesting challenge to incorporate that one color into this new palette that we understand.
It's funny that you mentioned food analogies, because whenever I have a musician coming to visit me from out of town, instead of oh, hey, can I give you like a couple of bucks to stay here? I'm like, no, teach me something.
Yeah.
Like, teach me a new recipe.
Right.
Like my friend Yue coming over,
Mhm.
she's taught me like 5-6 dishes now.
That's enough. That's great. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah. No, these new things, and by the way, you come to Flushing and you can go to a different restaurant every day of the year. So there are always new things to try. And so we're trying some new things musically, and it's an exciting prospect.
Very good knowledge. And then Jim, the professor, I'm the person give the concert Chinese name.
Yeah, he's the person give the Chinese title of the concert.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
She came to me consulting me with some idea.
It's good.
Analyze.
Well, you're the word man.
And as a friend writing the choreography.
Oh,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, for the Chinese music.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
The posters are beautiful.
Yeah.
The choreography. But he living in the other state.
Yeah, the poem is he always write a very beautiful Chinese poem. They have their online the poem club. Every week they have the yes, very good. So that the name they for your piece, the falling air, is very nice. It's very poetic.
I'm
Yeah.
thinking about the writer calling an article for sure for this concert, of course. Already thinking, I'm thinking. I have a column, small column in the World Journal, so running weekly.
Uh-huh.
But all those are the stories what I encounter in my daily life.
Yeah, probably today's and the program and the next week is gonna go to the Chinese journal.
30 seconds, 1 minute. Very short.
But we don't have speaker.
You don't need to speak. He can stand up and...
Like my standpoint, because when you bring someone in to collaborate and you have this like, as you said, it's a different experience, right? And not as much the instrument, but more the person behind the instrument sort of shapes that experience. So when I was working with a person who performs on pipa, it's, a lot of that was dealing with, meeting her and like seeing where she's coming to this, like coming from, and like how is she coming to this music. I don't know if I necessarily am giving you the best answer to your question, but I really, for me, the instrument and the color of the instrument matters, but it's more the person behind it whenever you're collaborating with someone. It's all about making friends. Is there any other follow-up you have to that? Anything I can do to help like better answer that? Because that's a difficult question.
Yeah,
for
sorry.
me, too.
Actually, it's my misunderstanding. I thought you yourself tried the instrument yourself. That's why I came back.
No, he plays the clarinet.
No.
Yeah, I
No
got
one-
you. You're coordinating. Get
right.
people together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no one would be crazy enough to lend me the pipa.
Right.
That's why I was so interested. Oh, how can you try that one? And what kind of experience? Yeah.
If you know someone who's willing to let me try one, I'll be there. Trust me. It sounds like a really cool experience.
Because I think you guys are talented. If you know the string instrument, you can try another one. Why not? But it's just my imagination.
It's not that easy.
We're so specialized in the instruments that we perform on, right?
Okay.
It would be crazy to
Right.
jump into that, and I think it'd be a very interesting proposition to have a group of like Western instrumentalists try to perform on Chinese instruments.
Right.
Yeah.
Professor, you talked about that the fusion of music is the energy of food. Now it's come to mind also because Charlie talked about different instruments to play and try. It's just like an interracial marriage too. It's also we're all human beings. It's all human beings, but we have a different background, different race, and a Western girl can marry to a Chinese man, and all versus fine. But they need time and understanding each other, mingle together.
That's right.
If success, they might produce a child with unique features.
That's right.
But not always success. That's not just to put two together.
Right. Yes, no, that's true. But and by the way, the United States and New York and Queens, in fact, is really the perfect place for all of this because Queens has such a diverse community. I mean, if you really want to make a big project, now we should, we could have, Hispanic or Cuban traditional music and Thailand and a couple of other South America and Italians, and we could do all kinds of crazy things. Don't call me. I'm busy.
Because melody of Flushing.
The melody of Flushing. Yes.
Just he talked for me something. I went to the music concert. I had to experience a lot of the composer musician. They always bring the most China stuff. Did you anyone bring something like Indian or something together with American or something? I saw a lot of performer in the over there from China, and I never saw some from heard from Indian.
Well, I have a friend who's right now working on a duo with cello and tabla. There's all kinds, in New York you could find every instrument, every musician you can imagine, so you could put anything together.
There's also a New Music World Institute in Amsterdam that takes specialists from every instrumental tradition around the world, and they bring them to one building, and they teach young composers there. What is it called?
New Music Ensemble.
New Music Ensemble?
Right?
I don't think that's what it's called. Maybe it is.
Okay. I don't know.
You mean the ensemble, right?
I forget the name of the ensemble. It's kind of an institute.
Yeah, the New Music Ensemble. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, they start maybe in the 1980s.
Yeah.
I collaborated with them.
Did you?
Yeah.
Huh?
Few years, almost 8 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Well, they have a very good Shen player.
Yeah.
That I watched some videos.
The story is when they started, they just invite a few Chinese composers, collaborate with them. Yeah.
And then it just grows.
Yeah, and they grow. So later,
Yeah. It's awesome to do.
Yeah.
So you never know what's going to happen. You put these things together and something wonderful happens. We hope.
Question?
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.